The backstage hallway felt colder than the dancer expected. Bright white lights hung from the ceiling, buzzing softly. The floor was smooth and polished, reflecting the glow of the lights above. People moved around quickly, stage crew, performers, assistants each, focused on their own task. But in the middle of all that movement stood one quiet figure. The dancers stood near a wall, holding their hands together tightly. Their fingers trembled slightly. Across the hallway, a large screen showed the stage outside. Bright golden lights shined over a huge audience. The judges sat behind their long desk, smiling politely as another performer finished. Applause echoed through the building. The dancer swallowed slowly. The sound felt distant, almost unreal. For a moment, they closed their eyes. Memories appeared in their mind, like old photographs. A small living room, a cracked wooden floor, a tiny radio playing soft music. Years ago, that was where everything began. The dancer had been younger then. Much younger. Whenever music played, their feet moved without thinking. Small steps turned into spins. Spins turned into little routines. There had been no stage, no audience, just a quiet room and a big dream. But not everyone understood that dream. One afternoon, while practicing alone, the dancer had heard laughter from the doorway. Two classmates stood there, watching. One of them had crossed their arms and smirked. "Dancing," they said. The other shook their head. "That's not a real future." The words had stayed in the dancer's mind for years. Even now, standing backstage, the memory still felt sharp. The dancer opened their eyes again. Someone nearby called a name. Another performer walked toward the stage entrance. A loud cheer followed as they stepped out. The dancer's chest rose and fell slowly. Breathing felt harder than usual. On the wall beside them hung a large poster showing previous performers who had become famous. Smiling faces filled the page. The dancer stared at the poster quietly. Each face looked confident, fearless, nothing like how they felt right now. A stage assistant walked over, holding a clipboard. "Two performers left," the assistant said gently. The dancer nodded. Their throat felt dry. Across the hallway, a group of dancers practiced together. Their movements were sharp and energetic. They laughed between steps, completely relaxed. The quiet dancer looked down at their shoes. Simple, black dance shoes. The edges were slightly worn from years of practice. They had been used on sidewalks, empty rooms, and quiet parks. Places where nobody watched. Places where nobody judged. The dancer remembered long evenings practicing alone under streetlights. Cold wind. Soft music from headphones. Cars passing in the distance. Those nights had been peaceful. There had been no pressure, no judges. Just movement. Just feeling. But tonight was different. Tonight, there was a stage. A massive stage. The dancer glanced again at the large screen, showing the performance outside. A singer finished their final note. The audience clapped loudly. The judges smiled and spoke among themselves. Then the host walked forward. "And next," the host said brightly, "we have a dancer who has traveled a long way to be here tonight." Backstage, the assistant looked up. "That's you," they said kindly. The dancer's heart began to beat faster. The assistant opened the stage door slightly. Warm golden light poured into the hallway. The sound of the crowd grew louder. It felt like standing beside a powerful wave. The dancer slowly walked toward the entrance. Each step felt heavier than the last. The floor changed from smooth hallway tile to dark stage material. A few feet away, the giant stage waited. The dancer paused just before stepping out. From this angle, the audience was still hidden behind the curtain, but the light was bright enough to make their eyes narrow. The assistant leaned closer and whispered gently, "You're going to do great." The dancer nodded again, but inside, doubt still whispered louder. What if they laughed? What if the judges didn't understand? What if all those years of practice meant nothing? The dancer looked down one more time. Their hands were still shaking. They slowly opened and closed their fingers, breathing in, breathing out. Then something small caught their attention. On the side of the stage floor, near the curtain, someone had written a short message with white tape. 3 simple words, "Just keep moving." The dancer stared at those words quietly. A small, unexpected smile appeared. Maybe that was enough. Maybe dancing didn't need to be perfect. Maybe it only needed to be honest. The host's voice echoed again. Please welcome our next dancer. The curtain began to open. The dancer stepped forward. Suddenly the bright stage lights surrounded them. The audience stretched across the theater like a sea of faces. Hundreds of people. Maybe thousands. For a moment, everything felt silent. The judges watched closely from their desk. One leaned forward with curiosity. Another folded their hands calmly. The dancer walked to the center of the stage. Their footsteps echoed softly across the floor. The music technician gave a small signal. The dancer nodded. Then they took their starting position, head lowered slightly. Arms relaxed. The audience waited. A quiet whisper moved through the crowd. Some people leaned forward. Others simply watched. No one knew what to expect. The dancer closed their eyes. One final breath. Inside their mind, the small living room returned again. The cracked wooden floor. The quiet music. The feeling of moving freely without fear. Slowly, the music began. A soft piano note floated through the theater. The dancer opened their eyes, and in that moment, something inside them began to change. The fear was still there, but something stronger had appeared beside it. Courage. The dancer lifted one foot slowly. The first movement was small, gentle, but it carried years of emotion. Years of quiet practice, years of doubt, years of hope. And for the first time that night, the dancer no longer felt alone on the stage. The music continued softly, and the story had only just begun. The first step was slow. The dancer's foot touched the stage gently, almost like testing the ground. The soft piano music continued to float through the theater. For a moment, the audience remained quiet. The movement was simple, but something about it felt real. The dancer lifted one arm slowly, letting it move through the air like a wave. Their body followed the motion, turning lightly with the music. Another step, another turn. The stage lights reflected softly on the polished floor as the dancer moved across it. At the judges' table, one judge leaned forward slightly. Another raised their eyebrows with quiet interest. The dancer could still feel the nervous energy in their chest. But something was changing. The music grew a little stronger. A violin joined the piano. The dancer's movements became smoother, more confident. Each motion flowed into the next like water moving down a quiet stream. The audience began to notice. The whispers stopped. Eyes focused on the stage. The dancer remembered those lonely nights under streetlights. The cold air, the quiet music in their headphones. Those moments had never been about impressing anyone. They had been about feeling, about telling a story without words. And now, that same feeling slowly returned. The dancer spun once, then twice. Their arms opened wide as if releasing something that had been trapped inside for years. The music grew deeper. The dancer moved faster now. Their feet tapped across the stage in quick rhythm. Every movement carried emotion. Every step felt like a memory. One step held the pain of being laughed at. Another held the fear of being judged. Another carried the loneliness of practicing alone. But now those feelings were no longer heavy. They were becoming something powerful. The dancer jumped lightly and landed with perfect balance. The audience began to react. A few quiet gasps echoed through the theater. Someone whispered, "Wow." At the judge's desk, one judge slowly smiled. Another leaned back in surprise. The dancer moved to the center of the stage again. The music paused for one short moment. Silence filled the theater. The dancer stood still, head lowered, breathing steady. Then the beat returned. Stronger this time. Drums joined the melody. The dancer lifted their head, and suddenly, everything changed. The next movement exploded with energy. The dancer spun faster than before. Their feet moved with sharp rhythm. Arms sliced through the air with perfect timing. The quiet performer who had stepped onto the stage earlier seemed completely different now. This dancer was fearless. The audience felt it. A wave of excitement began to move through the crowd. People leaned forward in their seats. The dancer jumped again, turning in the air before landing smoothly. The lights flashed softly around them. Every movement told the story of someone who refused to give up. The dancer remembered the words from the hallway floor. Just keep moving. So they did. Faster. Stronger. With more heart than ever before. The music continued to rise. Now the dancer moved across the entire stage. One moment, they were near the judges. The next moment they crossed to the opposite side with quick, graceful steps. Their body bent and stretched with perfect control. Sweat shimmered slightly under the stage lights. But the dancer did not slow down. The audience was no longer silent. People began clapping along with the rhythm. A young person in the front row stood up halfway from their seat, eyes wide with excitement. The judges looked at each other. One of them whispered quietly, "This is incredible." The dancer felt the energy from the crowd. Instead of fear, it now felt like support, like hundreds of people breathing with the music. The performance continued building. The dancer dropped low to the floor and rolled smoothly before rising again with a powerful leap. Gasps echoed again. Even the stage crew watching from the side looked amazed. The dancer's movements were no longer careful. They were free. The years of quiet practice had built something strong, something unstoppable. The music reached its highest moment. The dancer moved faster than ever before. Spins, turns, sharp footwork, graceful extensions. Each movement connected perfectly with the beat. The audience clapped louder. The judges began nodding their heads with the rhythm. The dancer took one final step to the center of the stage. The music slowed again. The energy softened. The dancer's movements became gentle once more. Their arms floated through the air slowly. Their steps were soft. It felt like the performance was taking a deep breath. The dancer remembered the small living room again, the cracked wooden floor, the tiny radio playing music, the dream that had started there. All those years ago, for a moment, the dancer's eyes filled with emotion. But they kept moving, because the story wasn't finished yet. The final notes of the music began to play. The dancer lifted their arms one last time. Then they turned slowly, and with one smooth motion, they dropped to one knee and held their final pose. The music stopped. Silence filled the theater. For one long second, nobody moved. Then suddenly, the entire audience exploded with applause. The sound was overwhelming. People stood up from their seats. Hands clapped loudly across the theater. Some people even cheered. The dancer slowly lifted their head. Their chest rose and fell as they caught their breath. They looked around the theater in disbelief. Hundreds of people were standing, clapping, smiling. At the judges' table, all 4 judges stood as well. One judge laughed in amazement. Another placed a hand over their heart. The dancers slowly stood up. Their eyes shined under the bright lights. For the first time that night, the nervous shaking was completely gone. The host walked onto the stage with a wide smile. That was incredible. The host sighed. The dancer laughed softly, still trying to catch their breath. The audience continued cheering. One judge leaned toward the microphone. "You walked onto the stage looking so nervous," the judge said warmly. But the moment the music started, you became something amazing. Another judge nodded. That performance wasn't just dancing, they added. It was a story. The dancer looked down at the stage floor for a moment. Then they looked back at the audience. So many faces, and so many smiles. For years they had believed those old voices that said the dream was impossible. But tonight proved something different. Dreams do not disappear when people doubt them. They simply wait. They wait for courage. They wait for the moment someone decides to try anyway. The dancer took one more look around the theater. Then they spoke quietly into the microphone. "Thank you for believing in the story." The audience clapped again, and somewhere in the crowd, someone shouted, "Never stop dancing." The dancer smiled, because now they knew they never would. And maybe someone watching tonight, someone sitting quietly with a dream of their own would remember this moment. Maybe they would remember that courage doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it simply means stepping onto the stage and choosing to keep moving. If this story touched your heart, Remember to share the feeling with someone who needs it, because one small step of courage can turn a quiet dream into something the whole world can see. The stage lights slowly dimmed, but the memory of that dance would stay with the audience for a long time. And for the dancer, it was only the beginning.